German Shepherd. Was left behind at the market. What baby did next? Left everyone in tears. The sight at Riverside Town Market that Saturday morning would haunt everyone who witnessed it. What a 5-year-old boy did for an abandoned dog left grown adults sobbing in the middle of the street. Don't forget to like, share, and let us know where you're watching from in the comments below. The morning sun cast long shadows across the cobblestone paths of Riverside Town Market when vendors first noticed the German Shepherd. He sat perfectly still beside the old wooden post near the main entrance, a worn leather leash wrapped twice around the weathered beam. His amber eyes tracked every person who passed, ears perking up with hope each time someone approached, only to droop when they continued walking by. Been there since 7 this morning, Rosa, the fruit vendor, mentioned to her neighboring stall owner as she arranged fresh apples in wooden crates. Her weathered hands paused in their work as she watched the dog maintain his vigil. Saw old Mr. Johnson tie him up. Had one of those oxygen tanks with him. The German Shepherd's tail, which had been wagging enthusiastically 3 hours ago, now barely lifted when children ran past. His massive frame, probably 90 pounds of muscle and loyalty, remained statue still, except for his constantly searching eyes. The water bowl someone had kindly placed beside him remained untouched. The piece of bread from the bakery stall lay ignored on the ground. "Should we call someone?" asked Miguel, the young man who sold handmade leather goods 2 stalls down. He'd been watching the dog all morning, something twisting in his chest every time the animal's hopeful expression faded into disappointment. "Give it another hour," Rosa replied, though her voice carried doubt. Maybe his owner just had a long appointment somewhere. But another hour passed, then 2. The sun climbed higher, beating down on the dog's thick coat. Market-goers began to whisper among themselves. Some tried approaching with food or water, but the German Shepherd would only sniff politely before returning his gaze to the crowd, searching for one specific face that never appeared. The afternoon brought more concern. The market security guard, a burly man named Frank, crouched near the dog, speaking in soft tones. "Hey there, big guy. Where's your person, huh?" The dog's tail gave a single weak thump against the ground, but his eyes never stopped scanning the thinning crowd. "I've seen this before," Frank muttered to Rosa as he stood up, his knees creaking. "Owner can't afford the vet bills or the food anymore. They leave them somewhere public, hoping someone else will take them." He shook his head, reaching for his phone. "Better call animal control before it gets dark." "Wait," Rosa said, grabbing his arm. Her eyes had caught something the others missed. "Look at his collar." Frank leaned closer, careful not to spook the animal. There, barely visible beneath the dog's thick fur, was a small piece of paper tucked into the leather collar. The dog remained perfectly still as Frank gently extracted it, though a low whine escaped his throat. The note was written in shaky handwriting, the letters uneven as if the writer had been struggling to see through tears. Frank read it aloud, his voice growing quieter with each word. "Please, someone kind take him. I'm going to hospice. His name is Rex. He's good." The small crowd that had gathered fell silent. Rosa wiped her eyes with the corner of her apron. Miguel turned away, pretending to reorganize his leather bags. Even Frank, who'd seen plenty in his 20 years of security work, had to clear his throat twice before speaking again. "Poor thing's been abandoned," he said unnecessarily, as if stating it might make it easier to process. "Owner's dying, probably couldn't take him where he's going." Rex, now they knew his name, let out another whine, longer this time, mournful. His head dropped to rest on his paws, though his eyes continued their desperate search. The sound carried across the market, a wordless expression of confusion and heartbreak that needed no translation. It was precisely at this moment that the Carter family arrived. Sarah Carter was juggling her purse and a shopping list, while her husband Mark checked his phone for the 3rd time in as many minutes. Between them, holding each parent's hand, was 5-year-old Tommy Carter. The boy had been chattering nonstop about the toy store they had promised to visit after grocery shopping, his dark hair bouncing with each enthusiastic step. But the moment Tommy's eyes landed on Rex, everything changed. The boy stopped so abruptly that both parents nearly tripped. His small body went completely rigid, his head tilting to one side as if he was listening to something only he could hear. The excited chatter died instantly. replaced by an expression of such intense focus that Sarah immediately knelt beside him. "Tommy? Honey, what's wrong?" Tommy didn't answer. His enormous brown eyes remained locked on Rex, who had lifted his head to stare back at the child. The crowd seemed to fade away, the market noise dimming to a whisper. For several long seconds, boy and dog simply looked at each other across the 20 feet that separated them. "Mommy," Tommy finally whispered, his voice strange and distant. "He's crying inside." His person left him here on purpose. Mark frowned, following his son's gaze to the German shepherd. "How do you know that, buddy?" "Did you hear someone talking about it?" But Tommy was already pulling free from his parents' hands, taking slow, deliberate steps toward Rex. Sarah reached out to stop him, her maternal instincts firing. "Tommy, no, that's a strange dog. He might be scared or aggressive. Stay back." "He won't hurt me," Tommy said with absolute certainty that seemed impossible for a 5-year-old. "He's just scared and sad." His heart hurts worse than his paws. His paws? Mark exchanged a worried glance with Sarah. They hadn't mentioned anything about the dog's paws. The crowd parted as Tommy approached, everyone holding their breath. Rex's entire demeanor shifted. His ears, which had been drooping for hours, perked forward. His tail, motionless for so long, began to wag tentatively. Most remarkably, he lowered himself to the ground, making himself smaller, less threatening to the approaching child. Tommy knelt just out of reach, his small voice carrying clearly in the hushed market. "Hi, Rex," Sarah gasped. "How did you know his name?" Tommy didn't turn around, didn't break eye contact with the dog. "He told me." Before anyone could process this impossible statement, Tommy extended his small hand, palm up, fingers relaxed. Rex stretched his neck forward, sniffing carefully. Then, in a movement that made several onlookers gasp, the massive German shepherd scooted forward on his belly until his head rested in Tommy's lap. The boy's hands found the soft fur behind Rex's ears, and both child and dog became perfectly still. Tommy's eyes were closed now, his expression peaceful yet concentrated. Rex's breathing, which had been rapid and anxious all day, slowed to match the child's rhythm. His owner's name was Mr. Johnson, Tommy said, eyes still closed. He had something wrong with his lungs. He couldn't breathe right anymore. He brought Rex here because he knew lots of people would see him and someone would help. Frank stepped forward, the note still in his hand. That's right. The note mentions hospice. How could you possibly know about Mr. Johnson? Tommy's eyes opened, but he was looking at Rex, not the adults. Rex is showing me, in my head, like pictures and feelings mixed together. He stroked the dog's head gently. Mr. Johnson loved him so much. They lived in a small house with a blue door. Rex would help him when he couldn't breathe right. He knew when the attacks were coming. Rosa knelt beside the security guard, her voice barely a whisper. This is impossible. Children don't just know things like this. But Tommy continued, seemingly unaware of the growing crowd or their amazement. Rex says his paws hurt from standing on the concrete for so long, and his throat is dry, but he was too worried to drink the water. He thought if he moved Mr. Johnson might come back and not see him. Sarah finally found her voice, though it shook. Tommy, honey, dogs can't talk to people. You must have overheard someone. He's not talking with words, Tommy interrupted, his young voice patient, as if explaining something obvious. It's different. It's like when you know I'm scared without me saying it, or when Daddy knows you're sad even when you're smiling. Rex just knows how to do it better. Mark ran a hand through his hair, completely at a loss. He was a practical man, an accountant who dealt in numbers and facts. This shouldn't be possible. Yet his son, who had never lied, to them, who still believed in absolute truths the way only young children could, was describing details he couldn't have known. Can you ask him something? Frank said suddenly, his skepticism warring with curiosity. Ask him what Mr. Johnson called him, not his real name, but a nickname. Tommy looked at Rex, his small fingers still buried in the dog's fur. A moment passed. Then the boy smiled, the first happy expression he'd worn since seeing the dog. Bear? He called him Bear because when Rex was a puppy, he looked like a little bear cub, and also because Rex would give bear hugs when Mr. Johnson was sad. Frank's phone clattered to the ground. His face had gone pale. I know Mr. Johnson, knew him. He's my neighbor's father. Used to talk about his dog Bear all the time. Said Bear gave the best hugs when his wife died last year. The market erupted in whispers. People pulled out phones, some recording, others texting friends. But Tommy seemed oblivious to it all. He was leaning close to Rex's ear now, whispering something too quiet for anyone else to hear. "What are you telling him?" Sarah asked, her maternal concern overriding her shock. "That we're going to help him," Tommy said simply. "That he doesn't have to be scared anymore." "Tommy, we can't just—" Mark began, but his son turned to look at him with eyes far too knowing for his age. "Daddy, he doesn't have anywhere else to go. Mr. Johnson is dying. He made Rex promise to find a new family. That's why Rex stayed here even though he was scared and hungry. He was keeping his promise." "How can a dog make a promise?" Mark asked weakly. Tommy's expression was matter of fact. The same way people do. He just understands it differently. The boy stood up, and Rex immediately struggled to his feet as well, pressing against Tommy's side. "We have to take him home." "Honey, we can't just take someone's dog," Sarah said, though her resolve was weakening at the sight of Rex's trusting eyes. "Show them the note," Rosa said quietly to Frank. Frank handed the crumpled paper to Mark, who read it again, this time noticing details he'd missed. The shaky handwriting, the water stains that might have been tears, the simple plea for kindness. "The owner abandoned him," Frank said. "Technically, after 4 hours, he's considered a stray. You could take him if you wanted, better than animal control." "Please, Mommy," Tommy said, his small hand resting on Rex's head. "He's special. He helps people. Mr. Johnson is worried no one will understand how special he is." Sarah looked at her husband, a silent conversation passing between them. They'd talked about getting a dog, but not like this. Not a full-grown German shepherd with unknown training and temperament. Yet, something about the way Rex looked at Tommy, the way the dog seemed to understand every word. "Just for tonight," Sarah said finally. "We'll take him home tonight and figure out what to do tomorrow." Tommy's face lit up, but he didn't jump or cheer the way he normally would. Instead, he knelt back down and hugged Rex gently around the neck. "Did you hear that? You're coming home with us?" Rex's tail wagged for the first time in hours with real enthusiasm. He licked Tommy's face once, gently, then stood at attention beside the boy, as if he'd always belonged there. As the Carters prepared to leave, Rosa hurried over with a bag. "Some food for him," she said, pressing it into Sarah's hands. "And my phone number. I want to know how this turns out." Miguel appeared with a new collar and leash from his stall. "No charge," he said gruffly. "Dog's been through enough." Even Frank contributed, producing a metal water bowl from the security office. "Had a dog once," he mumbled. "They need consistency." As the family walked toward their car, Rex padding obediently beside Tommy, the crowd watched in amazement. The boy who claimed to hear the dog's thoughts. The abandoned German shepherd who'd waited all day for help. The impossible connection that everyone had witnessed but no one could explain. "Did you see that?" someone whispered. "The kid knew things. Specific things. Maybe it's real. Maybe some people can really—" But the speculation died as the Carter's car pulled away, Rex visible in the back window, his head resting on Tommy's shoulder. The drive home was quiet except for Tommy's occasional murmurs to Rex. Sarah kept glancing in the rearview mirror, watching her son's small hand stroke the dog's fur rhythmically. Mark drove carefully, his mind racing with practical concerns. Vet bills, food costs, training, insurance, all the things that came with a large dog. "He's scared of the car," Tommy announced suddenly. "Mr. Johnson didn't drive anymore. Rex hasn't been in a car for a long time." Sure enough, Sarah could see Rex trembling slightly, his breathing quick and shallow. But the dog never moved from Tommy's side, as if the boy's presence was an anchor in his uncertainty. "Tell him we're almost home," Mark said, surprising himself by playing along. Tommy whispered something to Rex, and the trembling eased slightly. "He wants to know if there are other dogs." "No, no other dogs," Sarah replied, feeling slightly foolish talking to her son as a translator. "Just us." "He's glad," Tommy reported. "He doesn't really like other dogs right now. They make him nervous." Their house was a modest 2-story in a quiet neighborhood, with a fenced backyard that Mark had been meaning to repair for months. As they pulled into the driveway, their neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, was watering her roses. She did a double take at the sight of the large German shepherd emerging from their car. "Got a dog?" she called out, her tone neutral but curious. "It's temporary," Sarah called back, though she was beginning to doubt that herself. Rex stood in their driveway, his entire body tense, nose working overtime to process all the new scents. Tommy stood beside him, patient and still, one small hand resting on the dog's shoulder. "It's okay," the boy said softly. "This is home now. You're safe." The German shepherd looked down at the child, then at the house, then back at Tommy. Some kind of decision seemed to pass through those intelligent amber eyes. Rex took a step forward, then another, following Tommy up the walkway to the front door. But at the threshold, Rex stopped. His body went rigid, refusing to cross into the house. Tommy's parents waited, unsure what to do, but their son just stood quietly beside the dog, his expression concentrated. "He needs permission," Tommy said after a moment. "Mr. Johnson taught him not to go into houses unless invited. He's trying to be good." Mark's throat tightened unexpectedly. Even abandoned, even scared and confused, the dog was trying to follow his training. "Rex," he said, his voice formal and clear. "You're welcome here. Come inside." Rex's ears perked at being addressed directly. He looked at Mark, then at Sarah, then down at Tommy. The boy nodded encouragingly. With visible effort, Rex placed one paw across the threshold, then another, until he was standing in their foyer, tail tucked, but eyes alert. "Good boy," Tommy said, the praise making Rex's tail wag hesitantly. "See? You're home." Sarah headed to the kitchen to prepare some of the food Rosa had given them, while Mark found old blankets to make a bed in the corner of the living room. Tommy never left Rex's side, maintaining that strange, silent communication that his parents couldn't quite bring themselves to fully believe or dismiss. "He's thirsty, but he won't drink until everyone else does first," Tommy announced. "Mr. Johnson always drank first to show the water was safe." Mark filled a glass with water and took a deliberate sip, then set Rex's bowl on the floor. The German shepherd approached cautiously, sniffed, then began to drink in long, desperate gulps that showed just how dehydrated he'd become during his vigil at the market. "Slowly," Tommy said, and amazingly, Rex paused, lifting his head to look at the boy before returning to drink at a more measured pace. Sarah returned with a bowl of the dog food mixed with some rice and chicken she'd quickly prepared. Rex sniffed it but didn't eat, instead looking at Tommy with what could only be described as a question in his eyes. "He wants to know if it's really for him," Tommy translated. "Mr. Johnson sometimes couldn't afford dog food. Rex learned not to eat unless told it was his." "Oh my God," Sarah whispered, her eyes filling with tears. The thought of this loyal dog going hungry, never knowing if food was meant for him. "It's yours, Rex," Mark said firmly. "Eat." The German shepherd began to eat, slowly at first, then with more confidence. Tommy sat beside him, occasionally stroking his back, whispering things too quiet for his parents to hear. As evening approached, they faced the question of sleeping arrangements. Rex had been resting on the blankets in the living room, but as bedtime neared, he became increasingly agitated. He paced between the living room and the stairs, whining softly. "What's wrong with him?" Sarah asked, worried the dog might be in pain. Tommy, already in his pajamas, sat on the stairs watching Rex with that peculiar intensity. "He's confused." Mr. Johnson's bedroom was upstairs. Rex slept on a rug beside his bed every night for 8 years. He doesn't understand why Mr. Johnson isn't going upstairs. The simple explanation hit both adults like a physical blow. This dog was grieving. He was looking for his owner, waiting for the familiar routine that would never come again. "He can sleep in my room," Tommy said decisively. "Honey, we don't know if that's safe," Sarah began, but Tommy was already shaking his head. "He won't hurt me. He's not that kind of dog. Rex was trained to protect people, not hurt them." Tommy stood up, looking far more mature than his 5 years. "Mr. Johnson is scared that Rex will be alone tonight. Not Mr. Johnson now, but the Mr. Johnson that Rex remembers. In Rex's head, Mr. Johnson is still worrying about him." Mark and Sarah exchanged glances. The logical part of their brains said this was impossible. Dogs didn't carry memories of their owner's emotions. 5-year-olds couldn't read animals' minds. Yet the evidence kept mounting, detail after specific detail that Tommy couldn't have known. "We'll try it," Mark said finally. "But our door stays open, and if we hear anything concerning—" Tommy was already leading Rex upstairs, the dog following with obvious relief at having direction, purpose. They watched as boy and dog entered Tommy's room, Rex immediately investigating every corner, sniffing thoroughly before returning to Tommy's side. "He's making sure it's safe," Tommy explained to his parents standing in the doorway. That was his job with Mr. Johnson. Check the room, then settle down. Sure enough, Rex turned in 3 circles on the rug beside Tommy's bed, then lay down with a heavy sigh. His eyes remained open, watching as Tommy climbed into bed, but his body relaxed for the first time since they'd brought him home. "Good night, Rex," Tommy said, his small hand hanging over the edge of the bed to rest on the dog's head. "Don't worry. I'll be here when you wake up." Sarah and Mark retreated to their own room, leaving both doors open as promised. They lay in the dark, processing the extraordinary day. "Do you think it's real?" Sarah whispered. "This connection Tommy has with Rex?" Mark was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know what to think." But Tommy knew the nickname. He knew about the breathing problems. He knew things he couldn't have guessed. Maybe someone at the market told him. When? "We were watching him the whole time. He never talked to anyone except us and Rex." They fell silent again, listening to the sounds of the house settling. Then, just as Sarah was drifting off to sleep, they heard it. Tommy's voice, soft and conversational, carrying down the hall. "I know you miss him. I miss my grandpa, too. He went to heaven last year. Maybe they're friends now? Maybe Mr. Johnson and my grandpa are watching us right now." A soft whine from Rex. "It's okay to be sad. Mommy says being sad means you loved someone a lot. And Mr. Johnson loved you so much. That's why he made sure you'd find us." The sound of movement, maybe Rex adjusting position. "You want to see? Okay, I'll show you." Footsteps, small and careful, padding across the room. The scrape of a drawer opening. "This was my grandpa. See? He had white hair like Mr. Johnson. He was sick too, in his chest. He used to cough a lot, but he smiled all the time, just like Mr. Johnson did when he was with you." Mark felt Sarah's hand find his in the dark, squeezing tight. "Grandpa would have liked you. He always wanted a dog, but Grandma was allergic. I bet he's happy you're here now, like he sent you to us." The bed creaked slightly. "You can come up if you want. Just this once, because you're sad." The heavier sound of Rex moving, the bed creaking more substantially. "See? It's better when you're not alone. Mr. Johnson knew that. That's why he wanted you to find a family. He didn't leave you because he didn't love you. He left you because he loved you too much to make you watch him go away." Both Sarah and Mark were crying now, silent tears in the darkness. Their 5-year-old son was explaining death and love and loss to a grieving dog, and somehow it was the most profound thing they'd ever heard. The house grew quiet. After a few minutes, Mark crept down the hall and peered into Tommy's room. Boy and dog were curled together on the small bed, Tommy's arm thrown over Rex's neck, both fast asleep. Rex's eyes opened immediately at Mark's presence, alert and protective, but he didn't move or growl. He simply watched until Mark retreated, then closed his eyes again. The next morning brought new challenges and revelations. Tommy woke before his alarm, sitting up abruptly and announcing, "Rex says it's time." "Time for what?" Sarah asked, still bleary-eyed as she started breakfast. "I don't know. He just says it's important." They were about to dismiss this when Rex began pawing insistently at the back door, whining with unusual urgency. Mark led him out into the backyard, expecting a simple bathroom break, but Rex immediately ran to the far corner of the yard and began barking at the fence. Tommy followed, still in his dinosaur pajamas and bare feet. He stood beside Rex, his head tilted in that now familiar listening pose. "There's something wrong next door. Someone needs help." "Tommy, I'm sure it's just a cat or—" A crash from the neighboring yard cut Mark off, followed by a weak cry for help. Mark vaulted the fence to find elderly Mr. Chen on the ground, his ladder overturned, clutching his ankle. "Call 911!" Mark shouted, and Sarah ran for the phone. As they waited for the ambulance, Mr. Chen, grimacing through his pain, looked at Rex, who was watching through a gap in the fence. Smart dog. I've been lying here for 20 minutes, couldn't reach my phone. How did he know? Tommy answered before his parents could come up with an explanation. Rex heard you fall. He heard your breathing change when you got hurt. He used to help Mr. Johnson when he fell down. Mr. Chen's eyes widened, but he said nothing more as the paramedics arrived. As they loaded him into the ambulance, he called out to the Carters. That's a special dog you got there. Don't let anyone tell you different. Back inside, as they finally sat down to breakfast, Sarah noticed Tommy wasn't eating his usual peanut butter toast. What's wrong, honey? You love peanut butter. Tommy pushed the jar away, his nose wrinkling. Rex says I shouldn't eat it. He says it makes me smell wrong. Smell wrong? Mark frowned. What does that mean? I don't know. He just keeps showing me pictures of peanuts with a big X over them. Sarah and Mark exchanged glances. They had been meaning to get Tommy tested for allergies after his pediatrician mentioned he'd had some mild reactions to certain foods as a baby, but they'd been putting it off. Maybe we should listen to Rex, Sarah said slowly, just to be safe. Mark made an appointment with Tommy's pediatrician for that afternoon, partly for the allergy test and partly because he was beginning to worry about Tommy's intense connection with Rex. Was it healthy for a child to believe he could communicate with a dog? Was this some kind of trauma response to his grandfather's death the previous year? Dr. Martinez, who had been Tommy's doctor since birth, listened patiently as Sarah explained the situation, carefully leaving out the more unbelievable elements. Tommy sat on the examination table, swinging his legs, seemingly unconcerned. Tommy, Dr. Martinez said gently, your mom says you think Rex talks to you. Can you tell me about that? Tommy's expression became serious. He doesn't talk with words. It's like, you know how when you see someone crying, you know they're sad even if they don't say it? Rex just does that better. He shows me feelings and pictures. And he told you not to eat peanut butter? Tommy nodded. He says it's dangerous for me. He can smell something different when I eat it. Dr. Martinez made notes, her expression neutral. Well, let's run that allergy panel we've been discussing. Better safe than sorry. An hour later, she returned with the results, her face pale. Tommy has a severe peanut allergy, not just mild, severe, potentially life-threatening. How long has he been eating peanut butter? Years, Sarah whispered, her hand over her mouth. He has it almost every morning. He's been lucky. Sometimes these allergies develop over time. Each exposure could have been making it worse. If Rex really did alert you to this. She trailed off, shaking her head. I've heard of dogs detecting cancer, seizures, low blood sugar, but this is extraordinary. On the drive home, Tommy sat quietly in the back seat, sensing his parents' shock. Finally, he said, Rex saved me, didn't he? Yeah, buddy, Mark said, his voice rough. He did. That's what he was trained for. Mr. Johnson had seizures. Rex could smell them coming. He says I smell like Mr. Johnson did before something bad happened. Sarah turned in her seat to look at her son. Tommy, how do you know all this? Really, truly how? Tommy met her eyes with that disconcerting directness children sometimes possessed. I don't know how, Mommy. When I saw Rex at the market, it was like a door opened in my head. And he was on the other side, waiting. He says some people can do this. Not many, but some. Usually kids because grown-ups forget how to listen. Listen to what? To everything that doesn't use words. That evening, as they prepared dinner, carefully avoiding anything with peanuts, the doorbell rang. Mark opened it to find a middle-aged woman with red-rimmed eyes and a worn photo album clutched to her chest. I'm sorry to bother you, she said. I'm Linda Johnson. I think you have my father's dog. The Carters invited her in, Rex immediately perking up at the sight of her, his tail wagging but his body trembling with conflicting emotions. He clearly recognized her, but remained pressed against Tommy's side. Bear? Linda said softly, and Rex whined, taking a tentative step forward before retreating back to Tommy. He remembers you, Tommy said quietly. But he's confused. You smell like Mr. Johnson, but different. Linda's eyes widened. You're the boy from the market. The one who knew things. Your father is really sick, Tommy said. Not a question, but a statement. Rex is worried about him. Linda sank into a chair, tears flowing freely now. He's in hospice. Stage 4 lung cancer. He only has days, maybe a week. He was so worried about Bear, about Rex. He made me promise to check the market to make sure someone kind found him. She opened the photo album, revealing page after page of Rex through the years. Rex as a puppy, indeed looking remarkably like a bear cub. Rex graduating from service dog training. Rex beside Mr. Johnson at his wife's funeral. Rex alert and watching as Mr. Johnson used his inhaler. Dad got him as a service dog 8 years ago, Linda explained. Rex could detect his COPD attacks before they happened. Saved his life more times than I can count. But more than that, Rex was his best friend. After Mom died, Rex was the only reason Dad got up in the morning. "Why didn't you take Rex?" Sarah asked gently. Linda's face crumpled. "I live in a tiny apartment in the city. No pets allowed. I begged the landlord, but Dad knew Rex would be miserable there. No yard, alone all day while I work. Dad said Rex deserved better. He made me promise to let him find his own family." "His own family?" Mark repeated. Linda nodded, wiping her eyes. "Dad always said Rex was special. Not just the service dog training, but something else. He said Rex could read people, really understand them. Dad believed Rex would know when he found the right family." She looked at Tommy, who was now sitting on the floor with Rex's head in his lap. "I think he found it." "You could take him back," Tommy said suddenly. "Rex would go with you if you asked. He's loyal like that." "But," Linda prompted, seeming to understand there was more, "but he knows he's supposed to be here. With me. Mr. Johnson told him to find someone who could hear him. Really hear him." Tommy looked up at Linda with those two wise eyes. "Your dad knew about me. He saw me at the park last month. I was talking to the pigeons. Your dad watched me feed them and tell them stories. Rex says your dad followed us home that day. He knew where we lived." Linda gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Dad mentioned something about a special boy at the park. He said he'd found Rex's next person. I thought he was confused from the medication." "He wasn't confused," Tommy said simply. "He was just listening to things other people can't hear." The room fell silent except for Rex's steady breathing. Finally, Linda stood, bending to kiss Rex's head. "Take care of him," she whispered. Then, to Tommy, "Take care of each other." She left the photo album, saying Rex should have his memories. At the door, she turned back one more time. "Dad would be so happy knowing Rex is with you. He worried so much about leaving him. Thank you." After she left, the Carters sat in stunned silence. The implications of what they'd learned were staggering. Mr. Johnson had deliberately chosen them, had orchestrated Rex finding Tommy. But how could he have known about Tommy's ability? Unless... "He was like me," Tommy said, answering their unspoken question. "Mr. Johnson could hear animals, too. Rex says it got weaker when he got older, but he never completely lost it. That's why he knew Rex was special. They could really talk to each other." That night, as they tucked Tommy into bed, Rex now officially allowed on the bed after Linda's visit, Sarah asked, "Tommy, can you hear other animals? Or just Rex?" Tommy considered this, his small fingers absently stroking Rex's fur. "I can kinda hear others now, since Rex. It's like he opened the door wider, but Rex is the clearest. He's the loudest in my head. Does it bother you? The voices?" "They're not voices, Mommy. They're more like feelings with pictures. And no, it doesn't bother me. It's like finding out the whole world has been singing, and I just learned how to hear the music." Over the next few days, life settled into a new rhythm. Rex accompanied Tommy everywhere he was allowed, the two of them inseparable. The German Shepherd's health improved rapidly with proper food and care, his coat regaining its shine, his eyes losing their desperate sadness. But it was Tommy who showed the most remarkable changes. He began predicting things with uncanny accuracy. When their neighbor's cat was hiding in the garage, when a storm was coming hours before the weather report, when Sarah was getting one of her migraines before she felt the first symptom. "Rex teaches me," Tommy explained. "He shows me what to notice. The way the air smells different before rain. How people's faces change when they're about to get sick. Things animals have always known, but humans forgot to pay attention to." Mark found himself documenting these incidents, his accountant's mind needing proof of what seemed impossible. The list grew daily. Tommy knowing the mailman had hurt his back before he mentioned it. Rex alerting them to a gas leak 3 houses down. Tommy calming an aggressive dog at the vet's office by apparently explaining that the vet was trying to help. It was this last incident that brought them to the attention of Dr. Patricia Vance, a veterinary behaviorist who happened to be in the clinic that day. She watched in amazement as Tommy sat with a terrified rescue dog, both of them still and quiet, until the dog suddenly relaxed and allowed the vet to examine him. "How did you do that?" she asked Tommy directly, crouching to his level. "I told him about the nice family waiting to adopt him," Tommy said. "I showed him pictures of their yard and the kids who would play with him." Rex helped translate because the scared dog doesn't understand humans very well. Dr. Vance looked at Rex, who was sitting alertly beside Tommy, then back at the boy. "Would you and your parents be willing to come to my research facility? I study animal cognition and communication. What you're demonstrating, it could change everything we understand about interspecies connection." Sarah and Mark exchanged uncertain glances. They'd been protective of Tommy's gift, worried about exploitation or disbelief. But Dr. Vance seemed genuine, and Tommy himself appeared interested. "Only if Rex can come," Tommy said firmly. "Of course. I wouldn't dream of separating you two." The visit to Dr. Vance's facility a week later was revelatory. She ran various tests, all designed as games to keep Tommy engaged. Rex was given problems to solve, with Tommy translating his thought process. The results were undeniable. Tommy could accurately describe Rex's reasoning, his emotional state, even his physical sensations. "This is unprecedented, Doctor," Vance told the parents privately. "I've studied human-animal bonds for 20 years. What Tommy demonstrates goes beyond training or intuition. It's actual communication." "Is it harmful to him?" Sarah asked, her primary concern always Tommy's well-being. "On the contrary, Tommy shows remarkable emotional intelligence and stability. His connection with Rex seems to ground him, give him confidence. Many children who claim to hear animals are dismissed or medicated. You've allowed his gift to flourish." But the research visit had an unexpected consequence. One of Dr. Vance's assistants, intrigued by the boy who could talk to animals, he posted about it on social media. Within hours, the story went viral. 5-year-old boy can really talk to dogs. Scientists confirm. The Carters' quiet life exploded overnight. News vans appeared outside their house. Reporters called constantly. Parents of problem pets begged for Tommy's help. Scientists wanted to study him. Entertainment agents saw dollar signs. "We need to protect him," Mark said firmly, watching Tommy and Rex hiding in the backyard, overwhelmed by the attention. They changed their phone number, put up no trespassing signs, and Sarah took time off work to homeschool Tommy temporarily. But even as they tried to shield him, something else was happening. Tommy was changing, evolving. His connection with Rex was deepening, but more than that, he was beginning to sense things beyond the animal kingdom. He knew when people were lying. He could feel the emotional echoes in places where traumatic events had occurred. He started having dreams that weren't his own. "Rex is teaching me too much," Tommy confided to his parents one evening, his young face troubled. "He says I'm learning too fast. That I need to be careful." "Careful of what?" Mark asked. "Of hearing things I'm not ready to understand. Rex says some animals know things about people that are scary, dark things. He tries to protect me from those thoughts, but sometimes they get through." It was this revelation that made them realize they were dealing with something far beyond a boy who could talk to animals. Tommy was developing something unprecedented, possibly dangerous, certainly world-changing. The situation came to a head 3 weeks after Rex's arrival, when Tommy woke up screaming in the middle of the night. His parents found him curled in a ball on his bed. Rex pressed against him, both of them trembling. "The dogs," Tommy sobbed. "The dogs in the dark place. They're so scared. They're hurting them, making them fight." "What dogs, honey?" "Where?" Sarah held him tight, feeling his small body shake with terror. "I don't know where, but Rex can hear them. They're calling for help. They've been calling for so long, but no one hears them except Rex, and now me." Tommy's eyes were wide with horror. "There are so many of them, Mommy. In cages, underground. They make them fight until they die. And there's a man with white hair who watches and laughs." Mark and Sarah exchanged alarmed glances. This was different from Tommy's usual insights. This was specific, detailed, and deeply disturbing. "It's just a nightmare," Mark said, though he wasn't sure he believed it himself. "No," Tommy insisted, his voice stronger now. "Rex says it's real. He says we have to help them. We have to find them before more die." Rex whined, a long, mournful sound that raised goosebumps on everyone's arms. His amber eyes were fixed on Tommy, and there was something in his expression that looked almost like determination? Purpose? "How do we find them?" Tommy asked Rex directly, as if his parents weren't there. A moment passed, then Tommy's face changed, becoming older, harder. The house with the red door. 3 miles past the old oak tree, where the bad men take the dogs that won't surrender. "Tommy?" Sarah said, frightened by the change in her son's voice. Tommy blinked, and he was himself again, young and scared. "Rex says he escaped from there once, before Mr. Johnson found him. He was supposed to be a fighting dog, but he wouldn't fight. They hurt him and threw him away. Mr. Johnson saved him." "We should call the police," Mark said immediately. "No!" Tommy's response was instant and fierce. "Rex says the police won't help. Some of them know about it. Some of them bet on the fights." The room fell silent except for Rex's heavy breathing. Finally, Mark spoke. "We can't ignore this. If there really are dogs being forced to fight..." "There are," Tommy said with absolute certainty. 15 of them right now. 3 are hurt bad. 1 might die tonight if we don't help." Sarah pulled out her phone. "I'm calling Dr. Vance. She'll know what to do." But even as she dialed, Tommy was getting dressed, pulling on his jacket and shoes with grim determination. "We have to go now," he said. "Rex says if we wait, they'll move them. They always move them when someone gets close. Tommy, we are not going anywhere in the middle of the night based on what, Daddy?" Tommy turned to face his father, and in that moment, he looked nothing like a 5-year-old boy. "Based on Rex being right about my allergy, about Mr. Chen falling, about the gas leak, about everything." Mark had no answer to that. Rex had been right about everything, every single thing. The silence that followed Tommy's challenge stretched like a taut wire through the room. Rex stood between the boy and his parents, his massive frame trembling with an urgency that seemed to radiate from every fiber of his being. The German Shepherd's eyes moved between them, and Sarah could have sworn she saw something like frustration in those amber depths. "Listen," Tommy said suddenly, his head tilted in that familiar way. "Can you hear them?" At first, there was nothing but the typical sounds of night. The hum of the refrigerator, the distant bark of a neighborhood dog, the whisper of wind through trees. But then, just at the edge of perception, Sarah heard it, or thought she did. A sound like distant crying, so faint it might have been imagination. "That's them," Tommy whispered. "The fighting dogs." "Rex makes it louder for me, but they're always crying, every night." Mark ran his hands through his hair, torn between parental protection and the growing certainty that something terrible was happening somewhere nearby. "Even if this is real, we can't just drive around in the middle of the night looking for a house with a red door." "I know where it is," Tommy said quietly. "Rex has been showing me the way in my dreams. He remembers every turn, every smell, every sound from when he escaped." "When he escaped?" Sarah's voice was sharp with concern. "Tommy, you never mentioned Rex escaped from anywhere." Tommy's expression grew distant, as if he was seeing something far away. "It was 3 years ago, before Mr. Johnson found him. Rex was younger, stronger. They wanted him to fight because he was big and looked scary. But Rex doesn't have meanness in him. So they tried to make him mean." The boy's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "They hurt him, starved him, put him in a ring with a smaller dog and told him to fight. But Rex just stood there. He wouldn't hurt the other dog even when it bit him. So the man with white hair said he was useless. They threw him in a truck with other useless dogs. They were going to get rid of them all." Rex whined, pressing closer to Tommy as if confirming the story. "But the truck crashed," Tommy continued. "The driver was drunk. Rex got out through a broken window. He ran and ran until he couldn't run anymore. He hid in the forest for weeks, eating garbage, drinking from streams. Then one day, he smelled something different. Kindness. It was Mr. Johnson, feeding birds in the park. Rex watched him for days before getting close enough to eat the food Mr. Johnson left out. Sarah found herself sitting down, her legs suddenly weak. The detail in Tommy's story, the emotion in his voice. This wasn't imagination. This was memory, even if it wasn't Tommy's own. Mr. Johnson took him to Dr. Phillips, Tommy said. She found old scars, broken bones that had healed wrong. She wanted to report it, but there was no proof of where Rex came from. So Mr. Johnson just kept him, loved him, trained him to be a service dog instead of a fighter. And now Rex wants to go back, Mark asked. Why? Because he can still hear them, Tommy said simply. The ones who can't escape. Every night he hears them crying. And now that I can hear them too. The boy's face crumpled. Daddy, we have to help them. How can we sleep knowing they're suffering? It was Rex who made the decision for them. The German Shepherd walked to the front door and sat, his posture straight and alert, every line of his body communicating readiness. He looked back at them once, then faced the door again, waiting. He's going with or without us, Tommy said. He'd rather go alone than let more dogs die, but he knows he needs help. His legs aren't strong enough yet from when they were broken. His legs were broken? Sarah gasped. When? They seem fine now. No, Mommy. Can't you see the way he limps when he thinks we're not looking? The way he struggles with stairs? Someone broke his back legs a long time ago. They healed, but not right. Dr. Phillips said surgery might help, but Mr. Johnson couldn't afford it. Mark stood up abruptly. I'm calling someone. Not the police, but someone who might help. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts. My cousin Jake. He's a private investigator, does a lot of animal abuse cases for insurance companies. While Mark made the call, speaking in hushed, urgent tones, Sarah knelt beside Tommy and Rex. Honey, even if we find this place, it's dangerous. These are bad people who hurt animals. They might hurt people too. They already do, Tommy said, his young voice heavy with knowledge no child should have. Rex says they make people fight sometimes too, when they get bored of dogs. They find people who owe them money and make them fight for entertainment. Sarah's blood ran cold. This was beyond animal abuse. This was organized crime. Mark returned, his face grim. Jake's coming over. He says if we can give him the location, he has contacts in the state police, not local, state, who've been investigating similar operations. But he needs something concrete. Rex can show us, Tommy insisted. He remembers everything. 20 minutes later, Jake arrived. He was a tall, lean man with sharp eyes and a quiet demeanor that immediately put Rex at ease. The German Shepherd approached him, sniffed carefully, then returned to Tommy's side with what looked like approval. So, Jake said, sitting across from them, Mark says your son has information about a dog fighting ring. Before anyone could answer, Tommy spoke up. 3 miles past the old oak tree on Highway 47, turn left at the abandoned gas station. Half a mile down, there's a dirt road with a broken mailbox. The house is at the end. Red door, black shutters. There's a barn in the back, but the dogs are underneath in a basement they dug special. Jake's eyes widened. He pulled out his phone and opened a mapping app. That's incredibly specific. He typed in the directions, then froze. This property, it belongs to Alexander Monarch. He's been on our radar for years, but we've never had probable cause. Who's Alexander Monarch? Sarah asked. Officially? A successful businessman? Unofficially? He's suspected of running half the illegal gambling in this state. Dog fights, cockfights, underground boxing matches. But he's smart, keeps his hands clean, always has someone else's name on everything. Rex suddenly stood, hackles raised, a low growl rumbling from his chest. He was staring at the window, body tense. Someone's outside, Tommy translated, his face pale. Rex says it's one of the bad men. They've been watching our house. Jake immediately moved to the window, peering through the curtains carefully. Dark sedan, tinted windows, parked 3 houses down. How long has it been there? Since dinner, Tommy said. Rex noticed but didn't want to scare us. Jake pulled out his phone and made a quick call. Yeah, it's me. I need you to run a plate. He rattled off numbers none of them had seen him observe. Black sedan, license number Victor David 9472. A moment later, his face darkened. Registered to a shell company owned by guess who? Our friend Mr. Monarch. They know about Tommy, Sarah said, fear creeping into her voice. The social media, posts about him talking to animals. They must have figured out Rex is the dog that escaped from them. We need to leave, Jake said decisively. Now. If they're watching, it means they're planning something. But Tommy was shaking his head. No, this is what Rex wants. If we run, they'll follow. But if we go to the bad place now, while they're watching our empty house, we can save the dogs before they know we're gone. That's insane, Mark said. We're not using our 5-year-old son as bait. I'm not bait, Tommy said with that eerie maturity. I'm the only one who can hear them. Rex says the dogs won't trust anyone else. They've been hurt too much, but they'll trust me because I can hear their real voices. Jake was studying Tommy with an expression of disbelief mixed with growing respect. You really can communicate with him, can't you? With Rex? Tommy nodded. And through Rex, with other dogs. He's like a translator. He makes their voices clearer for me. This changes things, Jake said slowly. If you can really tell us what the dogs have witnessed, their testimony, through you, might be enough for a warrant. Their testimony? Sarah laughed, but it was sharp, edged with hysteria. Dogs can't testify. No, Jake agreed, but Tommy can testify about what he's learned from them. It's unconventional, but with the right judge, one who's seen Tommy's viral videos, who knows about his gift, it might work. Rex padded over to Jake and sat directly in front of him, those intelligent amber eyes fixed on the investigator's face. The dog's expression was so intensely communicative that Jake found himself addressing Rex directly. You want us to go tonight, don't you? You think if we wait, the dogs will be moved or killed. Rex's tail thumped once against the floor. Just once, like a nod. Jesus, Jake breathed. I've been investigating animal crimes for 10 years, and I've never seen anything like this. Rex says you're a good man, Tommy said suddenly. He says you saved a dog named Bella from a puppy mill last year. She was pregnant and sick. You paid for her treatment yourself when the rescue couldn't afford it. Jake's face went white. How could you possibly know that? I never told anyone, not even Mark. Bella's at your house right now, Tommy continued, his eyes slightly unfocused. Sleeping on your couch even though you said she had to stay on her bed. Her puppies all found homes, but you kept her. Rex says she knows you're here. She's waiting for you to come home. Jake stood abruptly, pacing to the window and back. This is real. This is actually real. He turned to face them. Okay, here's what we're going to do. I'm calling my state police contact. We're going to do this legally, but we're going to do it tonight. They won't believe us, Tommy said quietly. Grown-ups never believe kids about important stuff. They'll believe me, Jake said firmly, and they'll believe evidence. He pulled out a small device from his pocket. This is a camera, military-grade, night vision capable. If we can get close enough to document what's happening, combined with Tommy's testimony about what the dogs have communicated, we'll have enough. You want to take Tommy to this place? Sarah's voice rose. Absolutely not. Not inside, Jake said quickly. Just close enough for him to communicate with the dogs. To find out how many, where exactly they're kept, what condition they're in. Information we need for a safe rescue. Rex walked to the door again, this time pawing at it insistently. His message was clear. Time was running out. I have to go, Mommy, Tommy said, his young voice firm with resolve. Rex and I are supposed to do this. It's why Mr. Johnson left Rex at the market where we'd find him. It's why I can hear them. Everything happened for this. Sarah looked at her 5-year-old son, seeing not the baby she'd rocked to sleep just years ago, but something more. Something extraordinary and terrifying and wonderful all at once. We all go, she said finally, as a family. And at the first sign of danger, we leave. No arguments. Jake nodded. I'll drive. My car has reinforced windows and doors. Safer. He made another call, speaking rapidly. Need backup on standby. Possible raid on a monarch property. Yes, that monarch. I'll signal if we need you to move in. As they prepared to leave, Tommy went to his room and returned with something clutched in his small hands. It was the photo album Linda Johnson had left, the one documenting Rex's life with Mr. Johnson. Why are you bringing that? Mark asked. Rex wants the other dogs to see, Tommy said, to show them that there's life after the fighting, that humans can be good, that there's hope. They slipped out the back door, Rex leading the way through shadows to Jake's vehicle parked one street over. As they drove away, None of them noticed the figure in the sedan speaking urgently into a phone, or the message being relayed. They're on the move. All of them, including the boy. The drive took 30 minutes, though it felt like hours. Tommy sat in the back between his parents, his small hand resting on Rex's head. Occasionally he would murmur something, as if responding to a conversation only he could hear. "There are 14 dogs now," he said suddenly. "One died this afternoon, a small one named—" Rex doesn't know his real name. They called him Bait. Sarah's hand found marks in the darkness, squeezing hard. "Turn here," Tommy said, though they hadn't reached the landmarks he had described earlier. "Rex says there's a back way, less guards." Jake followed the boy's directions, turning onto a barely visible dirt track. The car's headlights cut through darkness so complete it seemed solid. Trees pressed in on both sides, branches scraping against the roof like fingers. "Stop here," Tommy whispered. "We have to walk the rest." Jake parked and turned to face them. "Remember, we're just gathering information." "We don't engage. We don't enter any buildings. We don't—" A sound cut him off, distant but unmistakable. Dogs barking, many dogs. But there was something wrong with the sound. It wasn't the normal bark of alert or excitement. It was desperate, pained, afraid. Rex's entire body went rigid. A sound emerged from his throat that Sarah had never heard before. Something between a growl and a howl, primal and furious. "They're starting a fight," Tommy said, his voice breaking. "Right now. Two dogs who used to be friends. They're making them?" He covered his face with his hands. "I can feel their confusion. They don't want to hurt each other, but the men are making them." "That's it," Jake said, pulling out his phone. "Probable cause. Active animal abuse in progress." He made a call, speaking in rapid, coded phrases. "Green light, move in now, silent approach, multiple victims, armed suspects probable." "How long until they get here?" Mark asked. 15 minutes, Jake said. "Maybe 20. "That's too long," Tommy said, suddenly standing. "One of the dogs is really hurt. He's giving up. He wants to die rather than fight his friend." Before anyone could stop him, Tommy was out of the car, Rex beside him, both running toward the distant sounds. The adult scrambled after them, Jake cursing under his breath as he tried to keep up, while also maintaining contact with his backup team. They crested a small hill and saw it below them, an old farmhouse with a red door, just as Tommy had described. Lights blazed from the barn behind it, and vehicles were parked haphazardly around the property. The sound of dogs was louder here, mixed with human voices shouting and laughing. "There must be 30 people in there," Jake said, pulling out binoculars. "This is bigger than just a local fight. This is a major event." Tommy stood perfectly still, his eyes closed, Rex pressed against his side. 43 people, he said. 14 dogs in cages, 2 in the ring, 3 more in the truck, new ones they brought to sell. "How can you know all that?" Jake asked, though he was already relaying the information to his backup. "The dogs tell each other everything," Tommy said. "They know exactly how many humans are there because they count the threats. They know where the others are because they can smell them, hear them breathing." A particularly loud cheer went up from the barn, followed by a sound that made them all flinch, a dog screaming in pain. "No!" Tommy cried out, and before anyone could grab him, he was running down the hill toward the barn. Rex tried to follow, but his damaged legs couldn't match the boy's desperate speed. "Tommy!" Sarah screamed, but her son didn't stop. Jake was already moving, pulling out his weapon. "Stay here," he ordered Mark and Sarah, then took off after Tommy. But Tommy wasn't heading for the main barn entrance where the guards were posted. He veered toward a small ventilation grate at ground level, one that Rex had apparently shown him in their mental communications. He dropped to his knees and peered through. What he saw inside made him recoil, but only for a moment. Then, with determination that seemed impossible for his small frame, he began pulling at the grate. Jake reached him just as the metal gave way with a rusty shriek. "Tommy, no!" Jake hissed, but the boy was already wriggling through the opening. Inside, Tommy found himself in a narrow space beneath the main floor. He could hear the crowd above, feet stamping, voices roaring. But down here, in cages that lined the walls, were the dogs. They all turned to look at him, and for a moment, there was absolute silence in his mind. Then, they all spoke at once. The mental cacophony drove Tommy to his knees. Pain, fear, confusion, rage, despair. It all flooded through him in a tsunami of emotion. He felt every wound, every broken bone, every moment of betrayal these animals had experienced. "I hear you," he whispered, tears streaming down his face. "I hear all of you." Rex had somehow followed him through the grate, bad legs and all. The German Shepherd immediately moved between Tommy and the caged dogs, and suddenly the voices became clearer, more organized. Rex was filtering them, translating them, protecting Tommy from the overwhelming flood. "Open the cages," Tommy said, understanding what needed to be done. "Rex says to open them all." He moved from cage to cage, his small fingers working the latches. Some dogs cowered, too broken to believe in rescue. Others burst out, ready to fight anything in their path. But when they saw Rex, when they smelled him and heard the subvocal sounds he was making, they all stopped. "He's telling them about Mr. Johnson," Tommy whispered to Jake, who had managed to squeeze through the grate behind them. "He's showing them that there's another way to live." Above them, the crowd suddenly went quiet. Then a voice, cold and authoritative, said, "We have visitors." "They know we're here," Jake said, pulling out his weapon. "Where the hell is my backup?" As if in answer, sirens suddenly split the night, many sirens, approaching fast. Chaos erupted above them, feet pounded as people ran for exits. Engines roared to life. But one set of footsteps was coming down, not fleeing. Slow, measured steps descending into the basement where they hid. A man appeared at the bottom of the stairs, older, distinguished, with silver-white hair and eyes like winter ice. Alexander Monarch himself. "The boy who talks to dogs," he said, his voice cultured, almost pleasant. "I've been wanting to meet you." Rex moved in front of Tommy, hackles raised, a growl building in his chest that made even the fighting dogs step back. "And the escaped fighter," Monarch continued. "Fighter 23, you cost me a considerable amount of money when you disappeared. Though I see you found yourself a new purpose." "His name is Rex," Tommy said, stepping out from behind the German Shepherd. "And these aren't fighters. They're dogs. They have names and feelings and families who miss them." Monarch laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Sentiment? How touching. Do you know what these animals are worth? What people will pay to watch them tear each other apart?" "I know what you've done to them," Tommy said, his young voice steady despite his fear. "Rex remembers everything. Every dog you've killed, every fight you've laughed at, every puppy you've stolen from families who loved them." "And who would believe a child claiming to speak for dogs?" Monarch asked, taking a step closer. The sound of splintering wood from above answered him. Police voices shouted commands. The raid had begun. Monarch's composure finally cracked. He reached inside his jacket, but Jake was faster, his weapon trained on the older man. "Don't even think about it." "You have no idea who you're dealing with," Monarch snarled. "I own judges, prosecutors, police commissioners. You'll never make anything stick." "Maybe not," Jake said, "but we have something you didn't count on. We have witnesses." "What witnesses?" Monarch scoffed. "These mutts?" "Every dog here remembers you," Tommy said quietly. "They remember your voice, your smell, your laugh when they were hurting. And I can tell their stories, all of them, every single thing you've done." For the first time, real fear flickered in Monarch's eyes. "That's impossible. No court would accept—" "The court of public opinion will," Jake interrupted. "Tommy's gift has already been documented, verified by scientists. When he tells the world what these dogs have experienced, when he describes in detail every fight, every death, every moment of cruelty, what do you think will happen to your empire?" Police officers flooded down the stairs, weapons drawn. "Alexander Monarch, you're under arrest for operating an illegal gambling enterprise, animal cruelty, and conspiracy to commit racketeering." As they cuffed him, Monarch's eyes never left Tommy. "This isn't over, boy. You have no idea what you've started." "Yes, I do," Tommy said, and for a moment he sounded much older than 5. "Rex told me, you're not the only one who does this. There are others, lots of others. But now we know how to find them." Monarch went pale as the implications hit him. Every dog he'd used, every animal that had passed through his operation, was a potential witness through this extraordinary child. His entire network, all his connections, could be exposed. As the police led Monarch away, Tommy turned back to the freed dogs. They were huddled together, some injured, all traumatized, but alive. He sat down among them, and one by one they approached. Not Rex stood guard, but the others drawn to this small human who could hear their pain. "It's over," Tommy told them, his hands gentle on scarred heads and trembling bodies. "You're safe now. No more fighting, no more cages." Sarah and Mark finally made it down to the basement. Having been held back by police until the area was secure, they found their son surrounded by damaged dogs, each one pressing close as if his presence alone could heal their wounds. "We need to get them medical attention," Jake was saying to a uniformed officer. "Some of these injuries are severe." "Ambulances are already en route," the officer replied. "Animal control too, and several veterinary emergency teams." "No animal control," Tommy said firmly. "They'll put them in more cages. They need to go to families, to homes." "Tommy, some of these dogs are dangerous," Jake said gently. "They've been trained to fight." "They were forced to fight," Tommy corrected. "Rex says none of them wanted to. Look." He stood up and walked among the dogs. Not one showed aggression toward him. Even the most scarred, most traumatized animals simply watched him with eyes that held a desperate hope. Over the next several hours, the scene transformed from a raid to a rescue operation. Veterinarians arrived and began treating injuries. Animal rescue organizations set up temporary shelters. Media vans appeared at the property's edge, held back by police tape, but capturing what they could of the story. Tommy insisted on staying with each dog as they were examined, translating their fears to the vets, explaining their injuries in detail that amazed the medical professionals. Rex never left his side, occasionally adding his own comments that Tommy would relay. "This one's name is Courage," Tommy said about a scarred pit bull. "His real name, not what they called him. He says his left shoulder hurts worst. There's something still in there from an old fight." X-rays confirmed embedded fragments from what appeared to be a previous bite wound that had healed over. "This one is Princess," he said about a German Shepherd mix. "She had puppies, but they took them away. She doesn't know where they are. She cries for them every night." A female vet had to step away, overwhelmed by the translation of the dog's grief. As dawn broke over the property, the full scope of what had been uncovered became clear. Not just the fighting ring, but connections to similar operations in 3 states, financial records linking prominent businessmen, and even some local officials to the illegal enterprise. It was, as one FBI agent put it, the biggest animal fighting bust in U.S. history. But for Tommy, sitting exhausted in the back of an ambulance with Rex's head in his lap, the victory felt hollow. "There are more," he said quietly to his parents. "Rex says there are so many more, all over, in cities and towns and places people would never think to look." "We stopped this one," Mark said, trying to comfort his son. "That's something." "It's not enough," Tommy replied, and in his voice was a determination that seemed impossible for someone so young. "Rex and I, we can hear them all the animals that need help. We have to do more." Sarah smoothed her son's hair, feeling the weight of what their lives had become. "You're 5 years old, Tommy. You can't save every animal in the world." Tommy looked up at her with eyes that held too much knowledge. "No, but I can try. Rex says that's what makes humans special. Not that they can do everything, but that they try anyway." Dr. Vance arrived as the sun fully rose, having been called by Jake. She looked at the scene, the rescued dogs, the arrested suspects, the small boy who had made it all possible, and shook her head in amazement. "Tommy," she said, kneeling beside him, "what you did tonight, it's extraordinary. You've proven that interspecies communication is real, that animals have voices worth hearing." "They've always had voices," Tommy corrected gently. "People just forgot how to listen." Over the following weeks, the story dominated headlines worldwide. The boy who speaks for dogs. Child's gift exposes massive fighting ring. Is this the future of animal rights? Tommy and Rex became reluctant celebrities, though Sarah and Mark tried to shield them as much as possible. They testified in a court, Tommy translating the experiences of each rescued dog with such detail and emotion that even hardened prosecutors were seen wiping away tears. Alexander Monarch was convicted on all charges, receiving a 40-year sentence. His network crumbled as co-conspirators rushed to make deals, terrified of what else Tommy might reveal through their former victims. But the real change came in smaller ways. Families who had lost pets to theft years ago came forward, and Tommy was able to reunite 3 dogs with their original owners by confirming details only those families would know. Veterinarians began consulting with Tommy on difficult cases, learning to read the subtle signals they'd been missing. Most importantly, the rescued fighting dogs began to heal. With Tommy's help, translating their needs and fears, rescue organizations were able to place even the most traumatized animals in appropriate homes. The scarred pit bull, Courage, went to a former Marine with PTSD, and they healed each other. Princess, the German's shepherd mix, was reunited with one of her puppies that had been sold to a family 2 towns over. 6 months after the raid, the Carters attended a gathering organized by the rescue groups. All 14 surviving dogs from Monarch's operation were there with their new families. The transformation was remarkable. Animals once forced to fight, now playing with children, lounging on blankets, tails wagging. Tommy moved among them, no longer translating pain, but joy. Rex stayed close, his limp barely noticeable now, after the surgery the community had crowdfunded to repair his old injuries properly. "They're happy," Tommy announced to the gathered families. "They want you to know they don't have nightmares anymore." Well, not as many. An older woman approached with a small terrier mix. "This is Buddy," she said. "You saved him that night." He was the smallest one, the one they used for... She couldn't finish. "For bait," Tommy said quietly. "I know, but that's not who he is now." He knelt and let Buddy sniff his hand. "He says you make the best scrambled eggs he's ever tasted. And he loves when you read to him at night, even though he doesn't understand all the words." The woman burst into tears, hugging her small dog close. "I do read to him. Every night. I thought I was being silly." "It's not silly," Tommy assured her. "He says it makes him feel safe. The sound of your voice means no one can hurt him." As the gathering continued, Jake pulled Mark and Sarah aside. "There's something you should know. Since the Monarch bust, I've been contacted by law enforcement agencies across the country. They want Tommy's help with other cases." Sarah's expression hardened. "He's a child, not a tool for police work." "I know," Jake said quickly. "That's why I wanted to talk to you. There's a proposal to create a special unit focusing on animal crimes. Tommy wouldn't be involved in raids or dangerous situations. Just consultations, helping interpret what rescued animals have experienced. Only when you approve, only in controlled environments." Mark and Sarah exchanged glances. They'd known this day would come, when Tommy's gift would be too valuable to keep private. "We'll think about it," Mark said finally. That night, as they tucked Tommy into bed with Rex, as always beside him, Sarah asked, "Do you want to help more animals?" Like Jake suggested. Tommy was quiet for a moment, his hand resting on Rex's head. "Rex says it's my choice. But he also says gifts are meant to be used. Mr. Johnson could hear animals a little bit, and he used it to help Rex. Now Rex helps me hear all animals. It's like a chain of helping." "You don't have to decide now," Mark said. "You're still very young." "I know," Tommy replied, "but the animals can't wait until I'm older. They need help now." Over the next year, Tommy and Rex became an unofficial consulting team for animal welfare cases. Always with his parents present, always with strict limits on what he would be exposed to. But his success rate was unprecedented. Puppy mills were shut down after Tommy revealed the locations of hidden rooms. A zoo was reformed after he exposed which animals were suffering despite appearing healthy. A famous racehorse was retired after Tommy translated that he was running through severe pain that X-rays later confirmed. But the most remarkable case came exactly 1 year after they had found Rex at the market. Tommy woke one morning with that familiar look of intense concentration. "Rex says she's coming." "Who's coming?" Sarah asked. "The one who needs us most." An hour later, there was a scratching at their door. Outside sat a female German shepherd, thin, scarred, with one eye clouded by an old injury, but her belly was swollen with pregnancy. "She escaped," Tommy said, his hand immediately going to the dog's head. "From another fighting place. But this one's different. They don't just fight dogs." His old face paled. "They fight children too. Street kids they grab. Kids nobody's looking for." Mark immediately called Jake, while Sarah brought food and water for the exhausted dog. Rex approached the female carefully, and they touched noses in a greeting that seemed to convey entire conversations. "She's been running for 3 days," Tommy translated. "The puppies are coming soon. Maybe tonight, but she had to find us first. She heard about us from other dogs. They all know about the boy who can hear and the dog who translates." "They all know?" Sarah asked, stunned. Tommy nodded. "Dogs tell each other everything important, and we're important now. We're Hope." The female, whom Tommy said wanted to be called Hope, delivered 7 puppies that night with Dr. Vance attending. 6 survived, each one perfect despite their traumatic beginning. But more importantly, Hope's escape and the information she provided led to the exposure of something even darker than animal fighting. Human trafficking hidden behind the animal fighting operations. The children Tommy mentioned were found and rescued, along with dozens more victims no one had been looking for. The man running that operation turned out to be connected to Monarch's network, and his arrest led to a cascade of revelations. An entire underground network was exposed, all because a pregnant dog knew about a boy who could hear her story. As the puppies grew, something extraordinary happened. Each one seemed to have a heightened ability to communicate with humans. Not like Tommy's gift, but more than normal dogs. They were incredibly intuitive, able to sense illness, danger, and emotional distress with uncanny accuracy. "Rex taught them," Tommy explained. "While they were growing inside Hope, Rex was teaching them how to listen better, how to understand humans better." Dr. Vance was fascinated. "It's not genetic, it's learned behavior passed somehow in utero." "This is groundbreaking." 6 of the 7 puppies were eventually placed with carefully selected families. A child with autism who needed a companion. A veterans hospital where one pup could alert to multiple patients' needs. A school where another became a therapy dog, able to identify troubled children before they acted out. But the 7th puppy, the smallest one with one ear that flopped while the other stood straight, stayed with the Carters. Tommy named him Bridge. "Why Bridge?" Mark asked. "Because he's the bridge to the next person like me," Tommy said matter-of-factly. "Rex won't live forever. When he goes to be with Mr. Johnson, Bridge will find the next child who can hear, and he'll teach them like Rex taught me." The thought of Rex aging, of eventually losing him, cast a shadow over the celebration of the puppy's success. But Rex himself seemed unconcerned, spending his days training Bridge, teaching the puppy in ways that went beyond normal dog behavior. 2 years passed. Tommy grew from 5 to 7, his gift evolving and strengthening. He could now sense some animal's distress from miles away. He knew when the neighbor's cat was sick before symptoms showed. He could calm aggressive dogs with a whisper and a touch. But it was Rex who remained his strongest connection, his translator and protector. Even as the German Shepherd's muzzle grew wider and his steps slower, their bond only deepened. Then came the night Tommy woke screaming again, but this time it was different. "The children!" he sobbed. "Rex, tell them about the children!" It took his parents several minutes to calm him enough to explain. "There's a place, overseas. They're using children to train the fighting dogs, making them be mean to kids so the dogs will attack anyone small. The children are in cages too, right next to the dogs." This was beyond anything they had dealt with before. International crime, child abuse on a massive scale. Mark immediately called Jake, who contacted federal authorities, who reached out to international law enforcement. "We need more information," Jake said. "Location, numbers, anything." Tommy closed his eyes. Rex pressed against him, Bridge on his other side. For long minutes he was silent, occasionally flinching as if experiencing pain. "Romania," he finally said. "Outside Bucharest. An old factory, 43 children, age 4 to 12, 67 dogs. They're going to move them tomorrow. They know someone talked." "How could dogs in Romania possibly communicate with Rex?" Jake asked, though he'd learned not to doubt Tommy's information. "It's not direct," Tommy explained, looking exhausted. "It's like whispers passing from dog to dog to dog. Each one adds what they know. Street dogs to pet dogs to strays to shipping dogs. The message travels until it reaches someone who can do something." The information Tommy provided was so detailed that Interpol was able to coordinate a raid with Romanian authorities. All 43 children were rescued, along with the dogs. The operation exposed a network that spanned 7 countries, using animal fighting as a cover for human trafficking. Tommy watched the news coverage with tears streaming down his face. "We did it, Rex. We saved them." But Rex was lying down more than usual. His breathing labored. Dr. Vance examined him and delivered the news they'd been dreading. Cancer, aggressive and advanced. "How long?" Sarah asked, her voice breaking. "A month, maybe 2. Tommy didn't cry. He just sat with Rex, their foreheads touching, engaged in a conversation no one else could hear. Finally, he looked up. "Rex says it's okay. He did what he was supposed to do. He found me, taught me, helped save all those animals and children. He says, Mister. Johnson is waiting for him, and they'll watch over me together." The next weeks were both heartbreaking and beautiful. Dogs began arriving at the Carter house. Not strays, but pets whose owners brought them to say goodbye to Rex. Somehow, word had spread through the canine network that the great translator was dying. Even Courage, the scarred pit bull from Monarch's operation, was brought by his owner. The former fighting dog lay down beside Rex, and Tommy translated their exchange. Courage is thanking Rex for showing him that humans could be kind. Rex is telling him he was always brave. He just needed someone to see it. On Rex's last day, he could barely lift his head, but his eyes remained bright and focused on Tommy. Bridge lay pressed against Rex's side, and Tommy said the puppy was receiving final instructions, last lessons in how to be a translator. "He wants to go outside," Tommy said, "to the backyard where he can smell the trees." They carried Rex outside on his blanket, the whole family gathering around him. It was sunset, the sky painted in golds and reds that reminded Sarah of that first day at the market. "He says thank you," Tommy whispered, "for finding him when he was lost, for giving him purpose after Mr. Johnson, for letting him teach me." The boy's voice broke. "He says he loves us, all of us, but especially me." Rex's tail gave one final weak wag. His eyes found Tommy's one last time, and in them was all the love, loyalty, and understanding that had defined their extraordinary bond. Then, with a soft sigh, Rex closed his eyes and was still. Tommy sobbed then, all his unusual maturity dissolving into the grief of a 7-year-old boy losing his best friend. Mark and Sarah held him as he cried. Bridge pressed against all of them, whimpering his own grief. They buried Rex in the backyard under the oak tree he'd loved to lie beneath. The funeral was attended by dozens of people and their dogs, all touched by Rex's story. Linda Johnson came, sharing that her father had passed just a week before. "They're together now," she said to Tommy, taking care of each other. As the crowd dispersed, Tommy remained by the grave with Bridge. The puppy was sitting exactly as Rex used to sit, alert and watchful. "Can you hear them?" Tommy asked Bridge. "All the voices Rex taught us to hear?" Bridge's ear perked, the one that stood straight, and he tilted his head in that familiar way. "Good," Tommy said, "because we have work to do. Rex showed us how to listen. Now we have to teach others." In the months that followed, Tommy and Bridge continued the work Rex had started. They helped expose 3 more fighting rings, reunited 22 stolen pets with their families, and identified medical issues in dozens of animals before symptoms appeared. But more importantly, Tommy began teaching other children. Kids who showed that same spark of connection with animals, who heard things others couldn't. With Bridge's help, he taught them to listen, to translate, to be bridges themselves between the human and animal worlds. "Rex always said it wasn't just about me," Tommy explained to a group of these children one day. "It's about remembering what we all used to know, that every creature has a voice, every life has value, every story deserves to be heard." On the first anniversary of Rex's death, the Carters received an unexpected package. Inside was a collar, old, worn, with a tarnished tag. The tag read simply, "Bear." The note attached said, "Found this in my father's things." He wanted Tommy to have it when the time was right. Linda. Tommy held the collar with reverence, then walked to Rex's grave and hung it on the small headstone they'd placed there. Bridge sat beside him, and for a moment, Tommy could have sworn he heard Rex's voice one more time, carried on the wind. "Well done," it seemed to say. "Well done, my boy." 5 years later, Tommy, now 12, stood before Congress, testifying about a bill that would recognize animal testimony through qualified interpreters in abuse cases. Beside him sat Bridge, calm and dignified, a perfect echo of Rex's bearing. "Animals have always been telling us their stories," Tommy said, his voice clear and strong. They tell us through their behaviors, their fears, their trust or lack of it. Rex taught me to hear those stories more clearly, but anyone can learn to listen better. Every animal saved, every child protected, every criminal brought to justice through their testimony proves that their voices matter. He paused, his hand finding Bridge's head in that familiar gesture. Some people say I have a gift, but Rex taught me that the real gift isn't being able to hear animals. It's choosing to listen. It's deciding that every voice matters, no matter how small or different it might be. Rex was abandoned at a market, left to die because he was old and sick. But he had so much more to give, so much to teach. How many other voices are we ignoring? How many stories are we missing? The bill passed unanimously. As they left the Capitol, a reporter asked Tommy what Rex would think of all this. Tommy smiled, the same smile he'd worn as a 5-year-old boy kneeling beside an abandoned dog at a market. He'd say we're just getting started. That night, Tommy sat in his room, now covered in photos and letters from people whose animals he'd helped. Bridge lay at his feet, and somewhere in the distance a dog barked, then another, and another. "I hear you," Tommy whispered to the night. "I hear all of you." And across the country, across the world, animals in need continued to pass their messages along, knowing that somewhere, a boy who had learned to listen from a dog named Rex would hear them, would help them, would be their voice in a world that had forgotten how to hear. The abandoned German Shepherd at the market had started it all. One dog, one boy, one moment of connection that rippled outward in waves that would never stop spreading. Rex's legacy lived on in every animal saved, every child protected, every person who learned to listen a little more carefully to the voices that spoke without words. Bridge suddenly stood, ears perked, tail wagging. He padded to the window and looked out into the darkness, then back at Tommy. "Someone needs us?" Tommy asked. Bridge's tail wagged harder. Tommy reached for his phone to call his parents, then Jake. Another animal in distress. Another story that needed to be heard. Another chance to honor Rex's memory by being the bridge between two worlds that should never have been separated. As he made the calls and prepared for another rescue, Tommy thought about that day at the market 7 years ago. How his life had changed in an instant when he'd heard Rex crying inside. How a simple act of compassion had led to hundreds of animals saved, dozens of criminals arrested, and a complete transformation in how society viewed animal consciousness. All because a 5-year-old boy had stopped to listen to an abandoned dog's silent cry for help. All because Rex had waited, trusted, and found his voice through a child who could hear what others couldn't. All because love doesn't need words, just an open heart and the willingness to truly listen. The story of the boy who could talk to dogs and the German Shepherd who taught him how had become legend. But for Tommy, it was simpler than that. It was the story of Rex and Tommy, a dog and his boy, a boy and his dog, two souls who found each other when they needed it most and changed the world simply by refusing to let any voice go unheard. And somewhere, in whatever comes after for the spirits of loyal dogs, Rex watched over them all, his tail wagging eternally, his voice carried on every bark, every whine, every joyful yip of dogs who knew that someone, finally, was listening. If this story touched your heart, if you believe in the incredible bond between humans and animals, please like, share, and subscribe. Comment below about your own special connection with an animal. We read every single one. Remember, sometimes the smallest voices have the most important things to say. We just need to learn how to listen. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so you never miss another incredible true story. Subscribe now and be part of our community that celebrates the extraordinary bonds between humans and animals.